I have to say, our guest today is one that you'll enjoy, although it's not clear to us that he's that confident in his writing ability.
That's exactly the case. I mean, the more you read it, then the more confused you get.
Frankly, we think Bruce Harris is selling himself short. See what you decide for yourself after listening to this interview. Support for I Hear of Sherlock Everywhere comes from MX Publishing, with the largest catalog of new Sherlock Holmes books in the world. New novels, biographies, graphic novels, and short story collections about Sherlock Holmes. Find them at mxpublishing.com.
And listeners like you who support us on Patreon or Substack, sign up for exclusive benefits at patreon.com/IHearOfSherlock or IHearOfSherlock.substack.com.
I Hear of Sherlock Everywhere, episode 320. It is not always 1895.
I hear of Sherlock everywhere since you became astronomer.
In a world where it's always 1895, it's I Hear of Sherlock Everywhere, a podcast for devotees of Mr. Sherlock Holmes, the world's first unofficial consulting detective.
I've heard of you before. You're Holmes the meddler, Holmes the busybody, Holmes the Scotland Yard Jack in office.
The game's afoot as we interview authors, editors, creators, and other prominent Sherlockians on various aspects of the great detective in popular culture.
As we go to press, sensational developments have been reported.
So join your hosts, Scott Monty and Bert Wolder, as they talk about what's new in the world of Sherlock Holmes.
You couldn't have come at a better time!
I'm Bill Curtis. This is I Hear of Sherlock Everywhere. Now, here are your hosts, Scott Monty and Bert Wolder.
Thank you, Mr. Bill Curtis. Yes, this is I Hear of Sherlock Everywhere, the first podcast for Sherlock Holmes devotees where it's always 1895. I'm Scott Monty.
I'm Bert Wolder.
And how do you like that? Have you checked your calendar lately, Bert?
Yeah, I have. I have checked my calendar.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, it's 1995.
Perfect.
And it's marked down from 2450.
Yeah, I remember an age when the Baker Street Journal had an annual subscription that was $18.95. And unfortunately, we could not claim that it was always $18.95 because we had to raise the prices at a certain point. Disappointing. But hey, time marches on. So this is part of what we do. And we are marching on here at I Hear of Sherlock Everywhere. We've got a wonderful interview today with Bruce Harris. And while it does involve a little bit of chronology, there are some other facets that you are going to want to stay tuned for, particularly with something we end with, a second view on chronology and a search that's going on all across this country for archival newspaper editions. So you'll want to stay tuned for that. Meanwhile, if you'd like to support the show, we encourage you to do that. You can find us on Patreon at patreon.com/IHearOfSherlock and on Substack at ihearofsherlock.substack.com. Both of those options give you the ability to listen to the show ad-free, and they also come with occasional bonus content where we have either outtakes or additional conversations or simply images or files or what have you that we share exclusively with the community there. So you want to stay tuned for that. Support either one of those at the link in the show notes. And of course, if you don't feel like supporting us financially, that's okay. But we would encourage you to share the podcast with other people. Get more listeners to join us here and leave a rating or review. Tell other people what you think of the show. So with that, let's jump into some of the latest. Well, of course, that means the learned societies are upon us, where we take a look at 2 weeks or so off of the Sherlockian calendar, speaking of calendars, and tell you a bit about what's going on in the world of Sherlock Holmes organizations from across the globe. So, Bert, why don't we open our calendar? Thank goodness it's not a page-a-day calendar. We'd be tearing pieces off frantically. And let's see what's going on in the first 2 weeks of December of 2025.
The first 2 weeks of December, well, December 3rd, on Wednesday, December 3rd, it's in New York. It's the Ash Wednesday dinner. And there are a couple of other things happening. Well, just one other thing happening on December 3rd. Also, the Transfixed Correspondence of Phoenix is having a virtual meeting. Shana Carter is the contact for the Ash Wednesday dinner in New York, and Lauren Cerconi is the contact for the Phoenix virtual meeting of the Transfixed Correspondence.
And get yourself set up for a triple play on December 3rd. First in Minneapolis, the Norwegian Explorers are having their annual...
You mean the 4th.
Oh, gosh. Let's try this again. And get yourself set up for a triple play on December 4th. That's right, the 4th. Minneapolis, Minnesota leads us off with the Norwegian Explorers. They've got their annual business and dinner meeting. You can find out more about them at norwegianexplorers.org and get in touch with Tom Gottwald. Over in Canada, in Quebec, the Bimetallic Question is having their meeting. Edith Poundon is your person there at bimetallicquestion.org. And also on the 4th in Columbia, South Carolina, the Handsome Wheels are having a dinner meeting. And Phil DeMatteis is your contact there at handsomewheels.com.
December 6th in Toronto, Ontario, Canada, the Bootmakers are having a special event in their annual general meeting. Thelma Beam is your contact at torontobootmakers.com. Also, 5 Miles from Anywhere is having a virtual meeting on December 6th. Derek Belanger can tell you more about that. And in Indianapolis, the Illustrious Clients are having their annual Blue Carbuncle Holiday Meeting. Find out more from Louise Haskett.
Yeah, hopefully they don't serve a goose on every table and people just carve through the goose frantically looking for that carbuncle. Okay, Lonely December 7th. Only one meeting, and it is the crew of the Bark Lone Star. See what happened there? It's a virtual meeting. Steve Mason is your contact. You can find more information out about the crew of the Bark Lone Star at dfw-sherlock.org.
And December 12th, Cincinnati, Ohio, lonely Cincinnati, Ohio on the 12th. The only thing happening on December 12th, the Tankerville Club is having a dinner meeting, and our friend Dan Andriaco can tell you more about that.
Superb. I love getting tanked at the Tankerville Club. And then once again, we have triple play on December 13th. The Parallel Case of St. Louis is having a virtual meeting. Rob Nunn is your contact there with Parallel Cases. The Norwegian Explorers is having their virtual study group. Find out more on their website. And the Cespudlians of London, Ontario is having a virtual meeting at cespudlians.weebly.com.
And then the 14th of December, as we lean towards closing the calendar, Keene, New Hampshire, the Monadnock Sherlockians are having a meeting. Anna Behrens, our friend Anna Behrens, can tell you more about that.
Superb. Well, we will be back again in 2 weeks with the second half of December. There are a lot of in-person events that are happening in the rest of December, so you'll want to stay tuned for that. And if your organization has an event and it's not listed on the Sherlockian calendar, get in touch with Ron Fish. His email address is right there at sherlockiancalendar.com. Bruce Harris is a member of several Sherlockian science societies, including the John H. Watson Society, the Speckled Band of Boston, the Adventuresses of Sherlock Holmes, the Norwegian Explorers, and the Sherlockian Chronologist Guild. He's the current Jabez Wilson for the Red-Headed League of New Jersey. He has written extensively about Sherlock Holmes and Dr. Watson. In January 2025, Bruce was invested in the Baker Street Irregulars as, wait for it, Harris. Bruce Harris, welcome to I Hear of Sherlock Everywhere.
Thanks, Scott. Happy to be here.
Now, Bruce, before we hop in here, I must say, you are the first, and maybe at this point the only, I'm not sure, fan, listener, etc., who has asked for our autograph on the iHose mug that you got for supporting the show.
It's a one of a kind?
It's a collector's item. Oh. Well, maybe that'll land in the BSI Trust archives at some point.
I was just going to say, I'm going to have to ship it off to the Lilly Library.
Yeah. Oh. You know, Bruce, the good news about that is if you put it in the dishwasher, that'll come right out.
It'll come right out, yeah. It all comes out in the wash. Well, Bruce, where and when did you first meet Sherlock Holmes?
I believe it was around 1964 or 1965 when I had acquired a paperback version of the short stories, with the lead story being Adventure of the Speckled Band. So nothing too out of the ordinary. Unlike most Sherlockians, I was not a voracious reader as a child, but after reading that Speckled Band story, I was just floored by it and quickly read the rest of the stories. And then shortly thereafter, I found a copy of the complete canon, purchased that and read that through. And I'm trying to think when I really became interested and went beyond the stories. I guess it was when I was in college in the early 1970s, when I was in North Carolina and I hooked up with the Anderson murderers of North Carolina, Scion.
Oh, is that a group that's still around?
No, they
you did them in,
are defunct. But what I did find actually in my bookshelf the other day was a certificate from the Afghanistan Perceivers, and they're still active. And I received a field commission, and it's dated July 27th, 1975.
Oh, my goodness. Well, happy 50th.
Yeah. Thank you.
That's amazing. So this was your a very early foray into the world of Sherlockians for you.
Yes. And then I remember getting some early versions of the Baker Street Journal, the old series of the Baker Street Journal, when I was visiting my girlfriend, who became my wife. But she lived in Little Rock, Arkansas, and I had visited there one summer and hooked up with the Scion there. And that's when I, started becoming more involved with Holmes.
What about your other reading? What about other fiction? What else? What had you read, before you encountered Sherlock Holmes? I mean, what caught
again,
your fancy?
I didn't read a lot. I've always been a big baseball fan, so I was always reading baseball. I do remember doing a book report on the Mickey Mantle story in 7th grade, and the English teacher said, "I'm sure you already know everything about him, so why did you read the book?" So, but I was also a Mickey Spillane fan. I liked Mike Hammer as far as fiction was concerned. And even some of the, I found the beat generation fiction interesting. Kerouac and that stuff I liked. But I never really a sci-fi fan. more of a mystery fan than anything, detective.
Fantastic. Well, you know one of our regular names around these parts, Eric Deckers.
Yes.
He is president of the Jack Kerouac House down in Florida. And I think we talked with Eric about that in episode 276. Because there's, obviously the whole literary field there around Kerouac and On the Road and all that.
Right.
If you ever have a chance to connect with Eric, you should rekindle your love of Kerouac together.
Yeah. Okay. I had gone to, in the New York Public Library, they had his, this was a few years ago, his manuscript, that was just one huge sheet that he had pasted together when he just wrote it for weeks on end.
Yeah.
Really fascinating.
Cool. So you had those early issues of the Baker Street Journal. When did you start contributing to the Baker Street Journal?
Well, the first article appeared in 1982. And I remember also I had a letter to the editor. I don't remember when. I think it was in the 1970s at some point, just saying how much I enjoyed one of the articles. And Julian Wolfe sent me a postcard. I was thrilled with that, thanking me for the letter. But so 1982, I had my first article in the BSJ, and it was entitled, "Did Sherlock Holmes Kill Charles Augustus Milverton?"
Oh.
Yeah.
And what's your answer? Don't leave us in suspense.
The answer was yes. But it's been since debunked by a few other people, I believe. I know Rich Krasunis wrote about it, and Carla Kessinger-Koop wrote not too long ago in the Baker Street Journal, and I think she made a better argument than I did. That's for sure.
Isn't it wonderful, though, when we can find pieces of Sherlockian scholarship or even create pieces of Sherlockian scholarship that bring about this kind of debate, whether it's good-natured or scholarly or, however tongue-in-cheek we want to take it. That back and forth that really gets us back to almost the origins of a Sherlockian scholarship in the Baker Street Journal.
Well, that's part of the attraction and the charm is the debate about all of it. All the theories. I had one where it's funny because I know you guys, I'm sure, don't remember it, but I had written one where an article which said that Sherlock Holmes preferred the cigarette as his favorite tobacco form versus the pipe or cigar. And one of the arguments I made then was, in The Dying Detective, at the end of his 3-day fast, the one thing he asked for, well, two things he asked for is a match and a cigarette. Not a pipe, not a cigar. But again, and I apologize, I forget who the author was. It came out an issue or two later. And in one of the early iHost episodes, you guys mentioned it, and you said that was a real put down on Harris's article or something like that. But I've since forgiven
I stand by that.
I've forgiven you.
I think it was a put down on a pipe. He just put his pipe down and had a cigarette.
So there are just so many topics that, it's just remarkable.
Yeah.
How did you first get interested in chronology? Because you mentioned, of course, you're a big baseball fan. And many baseball fans, including other irregulars that we know of, you and other irregulars, are very interested in the statistics of baseball and that element of it. But when was it during your first reading of Sherlock Holmes? did you begin to wonder, when these stories might have actually taken place, or was it later? Or?
Yeah, no, it was later for sure. When I was first reading, I mean, the first several, times through the canon, I didn't even give it a second thought, honestly. And then once I started looking at Baring Gould, like most other people, I just thought how difficult it would be. And I really never wanted to tackle it. And then I started reading others, J. Finley Christ and H.W. Bell. And in looking especially at H.W. Bell, who was, I think, one of the first ones to really concentrate or specifically deal with chronology. And he had really nothing to go on. Obviously no internet and very little previous research on it. It's just really impressed me. And in reading his book, it seemed like, well, maybe it's not that difficult, but I just kept putting it off. And then I said, you know what, maybe I'll just give it a try. And I wanted to do something a little differently. And so that's why I put it together by looking at the stories from last to first. And I got that idea. I have a quote here somewhere from Holmes himself in A Study in Scarlet, who said, quote, "In solving a problem of this sort, the grand thing is to be able to reason backwards." So, I started from the end and worked my way. And like each case I did individually, I started saying to myself, this really isn't that difficult. And I just kept going and going and going. And then, of course, it starts getting pretty muddy and pretty messy. But the first couple seemed, boy, this isn't so bad.
Yeah. Well, from the last to the first, because then you're in his last bow territory. Although the casebook is tough too. Did you find that the stories had enough clues, like the weather and the newspapers and so on, to construct a timeline? Or, in other words, was the internal evidence really there? And when you,
for the most part, yes, yeah. I think for the majority of the stories, the answer is yes. And I purposely try to stay away from the Watson wives situation in trying to date them because.
Wait, you mean he had more than one? Easy.
Maybe 6, according to some people, or 7. But it did come into play a little bit. I broke every rule I was trying to set for myself because I sort of had to. But for the most part, the stories do have clues, in there, and it's worth pursuing. And then the other part, if I can, talk about the not only the dates, which obviously are a controversy for everyone, but one thing that concerns me with that. Coming from, I hate to bore everybody with this, from a social, psychological perspective and experiments and experimentation, when you look at studies, what you strive for is validity and reliability. And validity is obviously the accuracy, and reliability is, can the results be repeated? If different researchers, can they repeat the same results? And this is clearly not the case with chronology because nobody can replicate anyone else's timeline. And I'm afraid to redo it myself from scratch because I'm sure I won't even come up with the same timeline. So, it's all a game. What could I say? It's a fun game, but it's a game.
Oh. Well, in some ways, Bruce, what you've described is, and this is well beyond my pay grade, probably something out of the realms of the time-space continuum, where there are multiple parallel universes all happening at the same time. There are multiple chronologies all available out there, and when we dip in and kind of re-engage and perhaps have a little bit of a different perspective about one or two or more stories, well, that changes the whole lineup.
I agree, and I think our friend Max McGee is into some of that stuff as well.
Yeah, well, for anyone who's interested in chronologies, we've done a couple of episodes on this. We talked to Vincent Wright in episode 144 about historical Sherlock and his interest in chronologies. And then we covered it again with Brad Kefauver in episode 309, Holmes in an Hour or Two.
Yes.
So we'll put links to both of those episodes in there, as well as the one we mentioned with Eric Deckers. Folks can check those out, of course, after they're done listening to this scintillating conversation with Bruce.
Right. Yeah, no, I heartily recommend both Vincent's historical Sherlock. It's excellent. There are, loads of them out there. And Brad's also has an online chronology as well as his book, the Sherlock Chronology in an Hour or Two. And, that's great because you can quickly get to the salient facts of the story and come up with a chronology yourself.
Yeah. DIY kit. Love that. Well, before we get off the topic of chronology, Bruce, why don't we talk about your latest addition to the Baker Street Journal, which does have chronology at its core,
Yes.
in terms of placing the sign of 4 around a particular time. You want to give us a thumbnail as to what the article is all about?
Yeah, so I had a theory in the sign of the 4, which is a chronologist's nightmare in and of itself. And I'm trying to find my notes on that. There are internal and external inconsistencies as far as dating that story. So it's just a mess. But as far as the internal, you have the day and the month and the year. Mary Morstan in the sign of 4 says, "This morning I received this short letter. It's dated July 7th. Shortly thereafter, she says it was a September evening. And so right off the bat, you have a problem. And incidentally, Conan Doyle wrote J.M. Stoddard, the editor of Lippincotts at the time, alerting him that there was this mistake. So even he was aware and was concerned, but nobody ever corrected the text.
These darn typos.
I'm telling you. They're everywhere. So, the chronologists don't agree with that. But I had two questions about the sign of 4 that I hadn't really seen before. Now, there are the normal mysteries with the sign of 4, Watson's war wound, obviously the date of the story, Mary Morstan, was it his first wife? Was it his second wife? Did they divorce? Did she die? Who killed Bartholomew Sholto? But I wondered two things. One, why did Holmes engage Athelney Jones in order to locate the Aurora on the Thames, when, in fact, the Thames police had a full division with several, over 100 constables and boats and 2 launches, and he totally ignored the Thames police in his search for the Aurora. That was number one. And then number two, what did he mean when he told Watson, he said, "You remember the Baker Street division of the detective force whom I employed in the Jefferson Hope case. this is just the case where they might be invaluable. If they fail, I have other resources, but I will try them first. And I wondered who or what were these other resources? So that's what the article is about in the current BSJ.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Well, and I think that one of the nice things about your article is that you are using that question and that answer and that chronological aspect of the answer to add some insight to Holmes's character and decision making. And I don't know that we want to spoil it for the readers, but the point I wanted to make is that beyond the intellectual exercise and the fun of the chronologist, here's a character that says it's July, and then the same character says it's September, and so when was it really happening? There's really something that you can, a little spark there that you can then apply to your insight about the character and motivations and behavior. And so that, in other words, what I wanted to suggest is there's really an answer. You're proposing an answer to why Athelney Jones. And also mention, Bruce, for a minute or two, a little bit about Athelney Jones, because he is a somewhat unusual character, isn't he?
Yes, correct. And after the Sign of Four, we'd never hear from him again. And that was one of the strange things I thought about Holmes involving him in the case. And it seemed like Holmes was hesitant at first, but then decides to call on him. And I think that perhaps, Jones might have stuck his nose where it didn't belong. And we'd never hear from him again.
Mm-hmm. So perhaps he got reassigned?
It's possible, yes.
He didn't end up at the bottom of the Thames, did he?
Maybe. He had an unfortunate diving accident after the Agra treasure went into the Thames. His snorkel let him down at a critical moment.
Yes.
Sounds like a case for the Thames police.
Yeah.
Well, that's fascinating. Well, I guess if folks would like to understand the full mystery here and read about Bruce's solution to it, well, all you have to do is subscribe to the BSJ, and it's not too late. We'll have a link, of course, to the Baker Street Journal in the show notes as well. Stick with us. We'll be back after this brief word from our sponsor. Of course, our friends at MX Publishing can keep you entertained and informed every day of the year simply by virtue of reading the wonderful books that they have available at mxpublishing.com. But did you know that they can also keep you entertained every day of the year with calendars? The Sherlock Holmes Illustrated Page-a-Day calendar is something that we've been supporting and enjoying for a few years now. Every page has a different canonical quote or a historical occurrence accompanied by an illustration. And there are also 4 Sherlock Holmes Advent calendars. The Mr. Holmes Advent calendar with 24 solve-it-yourself Christmas crimes. There are 4 volumes there. And you can have your choice of any of the 4. Mix and match if you wish. I think there is a discount if you buy more than one. And as we know, every December, Advent rolls around again. So you can use and reuse these calendars to your heart's content. Check out the calendar options at MX Publishing, along with all of their latest books and audio recordings. There's so much for a Sherlock Holmes fan to enjoy on mxpublishing.com. Bruce, a couple other things we wanted to talk to you about. One, obviously, we talked about your chronology. It's not always 1895, and that came out in 2002. But there is a related
2022.
2022, yeah.
Right.
Sorry about that.
That's all right.
But there is a related book which touches on chronology, but from a much different perspective, called the duration debate. What's this all about?
Yes. So the duration debate looks at the length of the time of the cases. And just like chronology in trying to date the cases, I almost find looking at the length of the cases even more interesting. And it's almost an easy way, or a quick way, if you will, to immerse yourself in chronology. And the idea came to me actually after reading one of Vincent Wright's historical Sherlock blogs. And he had mentioned something about the importance of the length of the stories. So you would think that there should be little or no controversy. The Holmes is brought into a case, he works the case, he solves it, and it's the end. So you have day one, might have day two, you might have day three, and that's that. But that's not the case at all. So, for example, the disappearance of Lady Frances Carfax, the chronologists who do, and there are a number of them who talk about the length of the cases. H.W. Bell says it occurred over 21 days. Baring Gould says it occurred over 18 days. J. Finley Chris says 8 days. Believe it or not, I'm getting mine. I believe it lasted 51 days.
Holy cow. Would you just add all the other days up?
So that's a good one. It's wild. The other thing, and I just want to highlight, a couple other things on where there could be controversy. So, like, I changed my duration for The Dying Detective because when does the story actually start? When Mrs. Hudson engages Watson, asks for help because Holmes is supposedly dying, or does the case actually begin the 3 days before when Holmes begins his fast? So I've actually changed my mind on that, and I think the case does start when Holmes begins his fast.
Well, that's fascinating, though, Brute, because what you're doing is you're taking, kind of backstory, off-page, off-screen actions that lead up to where our stories begin on the page. And
right.
It would seem to me to be even more difficult to discern that versus just what is plain in front of us. Is that the case or not?
No, that's exactly the case. I mean, the more you read it, then the more confused you get. The good news with, or trying your own chronology with duration, is each story is it's separate. It's in and of itself. You don't have to worry about every other story, which you do with full-blown chronology. But you can look at each story and try to decide when it begins and when it ends. And there are some, like Paul Thomas Miller, who has a full timeline in the back of his book, Watson Doesn't Lie, I think it's called, where he dates some of these things, like when Holmes began, or when crimes started to be committed. Another example would be the Greek Interpreter, which everybody agrees lasted 1 day, and I agree with that also. However, I was thinking about changing that to 2 days, because maybe we should include that newspaper clipping that came from Budapest that was received months after the case. So once he's reading, that newspaper clipping, is that still part of the case, or it's not? So maybe that's a 2-day case. And, sometimes Holmes puts a case aside for a few days. So is he thinking about it? Is he actually working on it? Or he's just ignoring it and waiting for further developments? So they're not all as clear cut. And, if you look at the chronologist, very few of the cases really have 100% agreement. Bruce Partington plans is another one. H.W. Bell, 2 days. Chris, 6 days. Hall, 10 days. Zeisler, 10 days.
My goodness.
And I think it lasted 3 non-consecutive days. So it's a mess, to say the least.
Oh, thanks for muddying the waters, Bruce.
Don't mention it. No.
Well, that would seem to have a not inconsiderable effect on the chronology.
Yes, that's true. I guess, you're 100% right. And it is possible that Holmes, could have been working on more than one case at the same time. I'm also of the belief that, the great hiatus occurred in 3 different years than what's normally thought of. Because in my chronology, for what it's worth, I had no cases in 1899, 1900, and 1901. So I think he might have been traveling then.
Interesting. I mean, maybe that was a great sabbatical. He was doing his early bee research. Wow, that's fascinating. I had never thought of it from that angle before, Bruce.
Yeah. Again, originally I hadn't, and I want to thank Vincent really for mentioning it. And then I started paying attention, and I saw that a number of chronologists did list the days, the length of the days. Some didn't, and when I did, it's not always 1895. I didn't do it, and then I regretted it. So I went back and looked at the story lengths. Excellent.
So one other thing I wanted to cover before we let you go, Bruce, there is I don't know how many Sherlockians are aware of this, but under the guidance of Ross Davies, who of course puts out the Baker Street Almanac, yes, you're involved in a rather impressive undertaking with respect to the dancing men. What is that all about?
I don't want to steal Ross's thunder. This is his project.
Yeah, but he calls you newspaper investigator extraordinaire, Bruce Harris. That deserves some kind of commentary.
Okay, so Ross is working on a paper, and I believe he originally spoke about the project maybe 2 years ago in Toronto, and then again a year ago at the Six Napoleons in Baltimore, and that's where I heard him talk about it, and where I got hooked. And the project, it's really still ongoing, although it seems to be sort of at its tail end. Ross discovered in 1903, Collier's magazine placed little advertisements in newspapers around the country, and also in Toronto and Montreal, with a little stick figure of a dancing man in a circle. And on the bottom of the circle, Ross noticed a little number, and it turned out to be a little Roman numeral number. And he quickly realized that each newspaper had a unique Roman numeral. So Collier's was a very early form of coupon, like identification, identifying where their advertising dollars were being spent effectively. So a reader of the newspaper would clip this little ad. It said, "Tear me out. I am good for 10 cents." And it was the double issue, the December issue of Collier's, which was a 25-cent issue where the Dancing Man story appeared. And so this 10 cents, obviously brought the magazine down to 15 cents. And the reader would bring that little torn out ad to their newspaper stand, give it to the vendor, who would then turn it into Collier's and get reimbursed, just like a coupon in a grocery store now.
Yeah.
And so there's a team of us, and I don't want to forget anybody, but in addition to Ross and myself, Ira Matetsky has been doing incredible work looking at newspaper circulations. These were bigger cities around the country where these newspapers appeared. So we've all been digging into looking first online. Those were the low-hanging fruit. And then scouring the libraries for microfilm and searching microfilm for these little ads. And so in addition to Ira, Greg Ruby is part of the team. Victoria Wood is part of the team. Olivia Malunzi is part of the team. She's a librarian. She's been helping us out. I know I'm forgetting someone, Dr. Melissa Aho, A-H-O. She's a Norwegian explorer, another librarian. She's been helping us out. And hopefully I didn't forget anybody.
Matt Hall?
Thank you. Matt Hall, absolutely. Yeah, and Matt created these little canvas bags with the dancing man symbol and circle, and it said, "I am good for 10 cents" on it. It's pretty cool. And
That's great.
so we've pretty much covered the whole map of the United States. There still are a few missing numbers out there, but it's really been a fascinating journey into early advertising and newspaper circulations, and it's just been fun.
That's great. Really wonderful. Well, what's the latest thing that's keeping you busy, Bruce? I mean, you've got your article in the BSJ. You're always on the hunt for dancing men coupons. I mean, who isn't?
Yeah, exactly.
You're a regular collector. What's next?
Well, I always try to each month try to contribute something to Timeline, which is the Sherlockian Chronologists Guild's monthly newsletter, put out by Brad Kefauver, and that's a group of chronologists. And it's he sends it out monthly at this point in a PDF format, and it's a group that's free to join. The other thing that in the back of my mind, sort of unfortunately, if you will, is I've been looking at one of these chronologies, the Biorhythmic Holmes, a chronological perspective by Carrie Cummings. And he was looking at biorhythms. He was supposed to come out with 5 volumes. He only came out with 2, so it's incomplete. And
he's had an arrhythmia.
No, biorhythms. So, he looked at the physical cycle, the emotional cycle, and the intellectual cycle. And each of these phases, they're 23 days or 28 days, 33 days. And he looked at Holmes's cycles. I might want to look at Watson's or might want to look at Holmes's in the stories he never got to. But I haven't tackled it yet. But it's something I'd like to do.
Excellent. Well, if you are as energetic and invested as you are in all of your other projects, I'm sure it is something we will hear more of before too long. If folks would like to get a copy of either of Bruce's books, it's Not Always 1895 and The Duration Debate, Both are available on Amazon. We'll have a link to those in the show notes for your ease. And of course, you have to show up at the BSI weekend and accost Bruce with a Sharpie so he can autograph something for you.
Won't be a mug. But yes.
We'll have to get you an extra one.
Yeah.
Well, Bruce, thank you so much for joining us here on I Hear of Sherlock Everywhere.
Thank you, guys. Pleasure.
Well, you know, the wonderful thing about all this is these sorts of studies really change the way you think about Watson as a narrator and Holmes as a character. And then the mysteries of the cases develop their own chronological mysteries. And you get insight into what the characters say and what Watson has to say. And it's really fascinating. I must admit, I never thought about this issue of how long did the cases take.
Yeah.
You know, I always had a general sense, but the idea that for one of these cases somebody could say, oh, it's 8 days, and somebody else could say, 51. That's something unusual.
As a matter of fact, in one of the Sherlockian universes out there, there's a case that's still going on today. I don't know which one it is. But here's the thing about Bruce, and something that fascinates me. And every time I've either had a meal with Bruce or sat with him or, chatted with him like this, he is someone that not only encourages me to think differently about a topic, right? It kind of brings up a subject for debate or, calls out a trifle of some sort. But he also is perfectly prepared to offer his own theories on things and brings a very thoughtful approach to everything that he does. And to me, that's a consummate Sherlockian, one who spurs questions on and answers questions at the same time. They may not be the same question, but, it's this whole idea of the great conversation. And that is what we do with the Sherlock Holmes stories for time immemorial. Well, as we are getting to the conclusion of this great segment that Madeline Quinones has been so kind to contribute to us throughout season 19 here, this is now the 29th entry in A Chance of Listening. So let's get right to it. It's A Chance of Listening with your correspondent, Madeline Quinones.
Hello, everyone. I'm Madeline Quinones, and today I am here to talk about the most recent canon discussion podcast out there. I am speaking, of course, of Sherlock Mondays / Sherlock Monthly. Now, Ed Pettit has been here on iHose before to talk about the show, but if you thought that was going to stop me from fangirling, you haven't been paying attention to this segment. Edward G. Pettit works for the Rosenbach Museum and Library of Philadelphia, and he started hosting what he calls Biblioventures back in 2020 during lockdown. He will take a story, such as Dracula, Frankenstein, or Jane Eyre, and a group of co-hosts, and run through the stories in a conversational annotation and live stream these conversations on YouTube. In the fall of 2023, Ed began Sherlock Mondays, starting with A Study in Scarlet and moving forward in publication order up to The Adventure of the Empty House, for which the Rosenbach has the original manuscript. His original set of co-hosts were Marielle Caro, Curtis Armstrong, Anastasia Klimchinskaya, and Monica Schmidt, and they alternated on the stories they covered. Sherlock Mondays also featured special guests Les Klinger, Ray Betzner, Steve Rothman, and Scott and Burt. I cannot begin to tell you just how much I loved spending 2 hours on YouTube every Monday evening with other Sherlockians, listening to Ed and the co-hosts and talking with people in the chat. Ed had built up a community of people who go from Biblioventure to Biblioventure, and as a newcomer to this specific group, I could very much feel that sense of community. By the end of the run, Ed had announced that the Rosenbach would run a paid subscription show for The Hunt of the Baskervilles across 8 episodes, which we were definitely looking forward to. But in the last normal episode of Sherlock Mondays, Ed also announced something that meant a lot to all of us. We would be finishing the canon after all, but on a monthly rather than weekly basis. Henceforth, the show would be known as Sherlock Monthly. But before we got to that point, there was The Hound. It was a great series, adding Mark Jones, Paul Chapman, Scott, Steve Doyle, and Max McGee to the lineup of co-hosts. My regret at the time was that not everybody could see it, but hey, the Rosenbach needs to make money. However, the full playlist of The Hound has just been released on YouTube, which makes me so happy. Over the summer of 2024, Ed also ran a couple of special episodes with Olivia Ritigliano of the Crime Reads website as a co-host. They discussed 2 of the detectives who appeared in fiction during the time in real life that Holmes was presumed dead, Loveday Brooke and Martin Hewitt. In November, Ed began the Sherlock Monthly run with the Norwood Builder and Ross Davies as a co-host. And since then, the show has included Nick Martorelli, Glenn Maranker, Rich Krishunas, Rebecca Romney, and, me, for some unfathomable reason. I got to do The Solitary Cyclist with Ed and Anastasia, and despite questioning my own credentials, I had a lot of fun. Now, I've been running through the history of the show without saying much about what goes on during it. For starters, the episodes are usually 2 hours long, and one episode featuring a former Apple exec and a Wisconsin punster might have gone out to 3 hours? But these conversational annotations are always engaging. Ed is really good at picking up people who know what they're talking about, who have unique perspectives, who have academic expertise. And none of this explains my inclusion. I'm kidding, I do at least know my canon. Also, during the Mondays run, there was a different cocktail every episode, designed by Mary Alcaro, continuing a trend that Ed had started back during Sundays with Dracula. It was always fun to see the different cocktails matched to the story somehow, even if you didn't have the ingredients to join in yourself. But another element that is absolutely unique to the Rosenbach series, among all the various canon discussion shows, is the inclusion of the original magazines. Before the show, Ed will make sure that the registrants get PDF scans of the story as it appeared in the Strand magazine, illustrations and all. And now that we're into the return of Sherlock Holmes, he is also including scans of the Collier's Weekly versions of the stories. Ed will dive into the publication history of the story and the artwork for it, and then we will get into the stories themselves. Is it any wonder a normal episode is 2 hours long? So, let's get into highlights. Okay, honestly, you should watch the whole thing. Seriously, just watch the whole thing. Yes, it's the equivalent of something like 3 seasons of American television at this point, but this is good stuff. I am positive that whether you are a newbie to the canon or whether you've been reading it for decades, there is something new and interesting for you to learn in this show, or at the very least, perspectives you might not have considered before. There's something in it for everybody. All right. I will recommend 2 episodes, starting with episode 29, The Adventure of the Empty House. I mean, come on. You get to see the manuscript for the story. And Ed, Monica, and Steve Rothman make for a great trio in this ep. Other recommendation is the next episode, number 30, The Observation of Trifles. Ed always has a wrap-up episode for his Biblioventures, wherein he brings back all the co-hosts, or as many as he can, and that's what this is. Curtis is absent, so it's Monica, Anna, and Mary with Ed, answering questions, and having fun talking about the canon in general. Moving forward, Ed took a break over this past summer, but now the new season is on, starting with Maria Fleischek and Jessica Fliss to talk about the Golden Pince-Nez. And this month we'll feature The Missing Three-Quarter with Max McGee and Erica Fair. Plus, coming up, we've got Ashley Polasek, Lindsay Fay, Bob Katz, Johanna Draper-Carlson, Matt Hall, Derek Bellinger, Daniel Stasshauer, and Tamar Zefrin as new co-hosts, plus some previous co-hosts returning. That is a stacked lineup, and I am here for it. And that's all I've got for now. As Ed says at the end of every episode, the game is a book.
Well, that is a rousing endorsement. I don't know that you can get much better than that.
Yeah, fabulous. Well, it's and well-deserved, too. Ed and his interviews and the videos are terrific.
They are. I have to say, though, I'm a little hurt that Madeline didn't have that level of enthusiasm when she reviewed iHose.
Well, she was just trying to be kind.
It's just a trifle.
Yeah.
And here we are once again, poising ourselves on the edge of our seats, waiting for Bert's ridiculous answer to this episode's canonical couplet. That's right, we give you 2 lines of poetry and ask you to identify which Sherlock Holmes story we're talking about week after week. And here, you remember the last time we were here, we gave you this clue. The apparent thief was quickly discovered, and nearby the key to the box room cupboard. Oh boy, Bert, do you know which story we are talking about?
Yes, sure. That's a terrific case. It's the one that features Sherlock Holmes' brother Mycroft. Mycroft brings Holmes a client who is kidnapped to help a Victorian inventor explain his work. It's the case Watson called The Adventure of the Geek Interpreter.
I'd like to say the geeks shall inherit the earth, but after that, I don't know. Surprisingly, no, you did not get it this time.
No.
One of these days, you're going to randomly land on it. It's going to be amazing.
It will be.
However, we did have an assist, as always, from our good friend Eric Deckers, who writes, Donnerwetter, I solved it. It's the story where Holmes goes undercover in a German Oompa band playing the accordion, a truly heinous instrument. Hey, Eric, in order to track down a Cooper who had stolen a crown made entirely of wooden staves. It's the story Watson called The Beer Barrel Polka Coronet. Wait, that's incorrect. I think I got too swept up in the Oktoberfest activities. It's actually the barrel coronet. Yes, that is right, Eric. That's the barrel we are rolling out here. So we're looking for the adventure of the barrel coronet. We will go to the prize wheel because we had a number of people write in and guess correctly. So we're going to give the prize wheel a big spin. Goes around and around like polka dancers and eventually lands on number 29. 29, and that is Matthew Ring. Hey, Matthew. Now, Matthew had a note he appended with his answer. He said, hello, Bert and Scott. Wanted to drop you a note and tell you how much I am enjoying I Hear of Sherlock Everywhere and Trifles. About 6 months ago, I began both podcasts. I started at the beginning, as one normally does, and only now have I caught up to your current episodes. Wow, that's amazing, Matthew. He said, I didn't want to listen to any new episodes until I had completed your entire library. It's been a fun half year. Wow. I think the only thing is that Matthew hasn't been committed to any facility at this point. It's impressive. He says, thank you very much for providing the entertainment you do, along with your sharing the immense knowledge both of you have, as well as your many interesting guests. Keep up the good work. Looking forward to following you in real time now. The game's afoot. Cheers.
Oh, thank you. Well, that's lovely. Lovely.
Wasn't it?
The whole thing.
Yeah. And
well, you hear quite a bit going on there, including how much better we get in recording sound. How the technology improved from 2007.
Oh, I cringe to go back and listen to some of those earlier episodes, both technologically as well as our interview ability. I think I like to think we've evolved over that time. But Matthew, thank you for joining us on that journey, and we're going to send you something from the archives here, from the vaults, and thanks for your enthusiasm and your commitment to all of this. So, well, if you would like to get something this time around, we're going to have a copy of one of Bruce's books. You're going to get your choice, whether it is not always 1895 or The Duration Debate. You'll have your pick. You let us know if we choose your name from among all of the correct answers to this clue. A post from Pondicherry and another from Dundee took a client's life by villains dead upon the sea. If you know the answer to this episode's canonical couplet, put it in an email addressed to comment@ihearofsherlock.com with canonical couplet in the subject line. If you are among all of the correct answers and we choose your name at random, you'll win. Good luck. Okay, Bert. You going trick-or-treating?
Am I going trick-or-treating? I'd love to go trick-or-treating.
Yeah.
You know, it's a temptation always to dress up as Sherlock Holmes, which is easy to do. And it's amazing how many people still easily recognize. Oh, they look at you at a glance and figure out who you are.
It's true. That's true. I've decided I am going. It's going to be almost like reverse trick-or-treating for me. Yes, I sit on my porch and hand out candy to the kids that come by, but as the hour darkens, as the those hours in the moor, as they are spooky, I have a Hound of the Baskervilles costume. And I'm going to bound out from behind the bushes and scare kids so much that they drop their candy in the little U alley I have set up here. So I'll just scoop it all up and start all over again.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah.
That's very good. Yeah.
Well, folks, you're probably scared enough as it is after this much I-hose. We thank you for joining us and encourage you to tell other people about the show and bring other Sherlockians along. Have yourself a wonderful rest of October. Hopefully you get to reread The Hound of the Baskervilles along the way. And, I guess that's where I say this is the always hounded Scott Monty.
And I guess I must be just wrapped up in a Baskerville. I'm Bert Wolger.
And together we say, the games are foot.
The game's afoot.
I'm afraid that in the pleasure of this conversation, I am neglecting business of importance, which awaits me elsewhere.
Thank you for listening. Please be sure to join us again for the next episode of I Hear of Sherlock Everywhere, the first podcast dedicated to Sherlock Holmes.
Goodbye, and good luck, and believe me to be, my dear fellow, very sincerely yours, Sherlock Holmes.